Yeah, it's okay. in the night. Living honest.
Sunny, can you hear me?
Loud and clear, Mario.
Sunny, can you hear me?
All good. Thanks, Mario.
Printing. It's okay.
Good morning. I'm good, and you? That's what I'm taking.
Mazambane.
Doris.
Unjani Mazambane? Alright. Ngiyabonga. Alright. Ngiyabonga.
Member begging sibangela umsindo.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Recording in progress.
The House Chairperson.
There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the first order.
Debate on Human Rights Day. 3 decades of respect for and promotion of human rights.
The Honorable Chawile Mukhaja.
Citizens of our beloved South Africa, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. These words echo a call for international solidarity. These words resonate deeply with the spirit of transformation and liberation that runs through the veins of the African National Congress. Imbued into our DNA is that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the people of Palestine. The Freedom Charter states that there shall be peace and friendship amongst all our people. These values were practiced by millions of people around the world to build the international consensus that ended the iniquitous system apartheid. Our glorious history of resistance against oppression was watered by tears of mothers in Lusaka who housed our freedom fighters, powered by students in the Netherlands who successfully launched boycott campaigns against South African products, and inspired by the sweet voices of Tracy Chapman, Anita Baker, Peter Gabriel, and many others risking their careers to sing "Free Nelson Mandela." We are the products and beneficiaries of all this energy we call international solidarity. I am a beneficiary of the efforts of activists across the lands standing up against the apartheid regime in the quest for the liberation of all, for us to equally enjoy all universal human rights in the manner in which we do today. Born in 1993 on the 20th of August, I am Dintsalo. I am democracy, living the reality of the crystallization of the wars of resistance against colonial conquest, of the formation of the African National Congress, and a future espoused in the African claims which envisioned the Bill of Rights. So, as a child of this democracy, as a Dintsalo, one has the responsibility to use their voice to speak truth to power. Thus, we must remember that our freedom cannot be separated from that of the girl child in Afghanistan, whose right to basic education is being completely denied as we sit here today. And lest we be tempted to speak in muffled tones on those homophobic laws passed in Uganda that view members of the LGBTQIA community as lesser human beings. As we embrace the human rights that we enjoy today, we are reminded that untu ngabantu, citizens of South Africa, be reminded that change in the course of justice is inevitable. Join me as I reflect on the life of ukhokho wam, umama kagogo wam, my great-grandmother, Maria Puleng Mthethwa, born in 1925. Maria, a South African native, so like you would say, was not actually a slave, but a pariah in the land of her birth. Maria could not attend school because she had to work at the landlord's home from the age of 9. She could not play like other children, but had to see to the needs of the farmers' children. Her family did not own the land. They had to labor. She lived with fear of torture for not producing a dompas, something I cannot relate to. President Mbeki expresses that the reality of her birth condemned her to a village. Circumstances she did not choose confined her to a district. Owning a house was impossible. To be a doctor was beyond a dream. Maria, living through apartheid South Africa and democratic South Africa, will attest to the fact that her life changed with the advent of democracy on the glorious 27th of April, 1994. The first democratic election was a turning point in our country's history, demonstrating our shared commitment to nation building, freedom, social justice, and democracy. Determined, our foremothers ended centuries of colonial and apartheid rule and established a new South Africa founded on progressive constitutional democracy with equal freedoms and rights for all. It is indisputable that today the lives of millions has improved. We do, however, acknowledge that as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our communities, none of us can truly rest. We need to do more, we need to do better, and we need to do it together. Honorable members, in 1994, South Africa had an estimated population of 43 million people. Today, we are 60 million people. And I want you to take this into consideration as I make the following reflections. The Freedom Charter states that the doors of learning and culture shall be opened. In 1994, only 29.2 billion was allocated to education. This government has deliberately increased that to 480 billion in 2024 for education and learning. In 1996, only 3.4 million people had a matric. In 2022, 14.1 million people are reported to have completed their matric. In 1994, below 1.5 million people had post-matric qualifications in South Africa, with the majority vastly being, of course, white South Africans. But today, in 2024, over 4.6 million South Africans have post-matric qualifications, be it a degree, be it a diploma, be it a master's, be it a PhD. That is under this democratic government. In 2014, the budget allocation towards NSFAS was just over 6 billion, funding students through a loan. Today, over 53 billion rand has been allocated to fund over 1 million young people through NSFAS for free. In 1994, the budget for health was only 2.2 billion. Today, the budget for an inclusive healthcare system that all citizens enjoy is sitting at over 271 billion rand. In 2002, AIDS-related deaths were 191,000. Today, AIDS-related deaths are well below 85,000. This is a result of the ANC implementing the largest HIV treatment in the world. In 1994, only 2.5 million people received social protection, mostly the old age and mostly of a particular race. Today, The budget for a comprehensive social protection system intended to protect the dignity of all citizens is sitting at 387 billion rand, supporting 1.1 million persons with disabilities, supporting 13.4 million children, supporting 218,000 children in foster care, 4.1 million old age persons, and further cushioning 18.8 million citizens requiring social relief of distress. As the ANC, we commit to further improve education, health outcomes, and various social protections in order to overcome inequality and build the capabilities of all citizens. Before 1994, a Black African boy from the townships of the Eastern Cape could have never dreamt of being a rugby player, let alone a captain of the national Springbok rugby team. Today, Siya Kolisi is a world-renowned sportsman, a two-time Rugby World Cup winning national captain. Today, Bongi Msomi, a gender non-conforming Black woman, would not have imagined being the captain of the national netball Protea team in the year that South Africa would be the first country on the continent to host the Netball World Cup. Before 1994, I'm not sure that we would have had a 37-year-old Dr. Sandile Cele acknowledged by the National System of Innovation for discovering a COVID variant. President Mbeki over the weekend says anyone who disputes the evidence of progress in democratic South Africa is in fact lying. If you dispute the progress that this government has made over the last 30 years, you are lying. President Mbeki says, in fact, you're living in another country, not South Africa, not the South Africa that we are living in, not the South Africa that Tintswalo is living in. Undoing years of oppression that denied custodians of this country their basic rights is, of course, not going to be an easy one. But to not try would be a crime against humanity. This government commits itself to rise to the occasion yet again, like it's done in liberating this country and in governing it in the last 30 years. We admit our shortcomings so that we chart a brighter future. Citizens feel that we have been soft on corruption, that we do not care about the ordinary citizens, that some of our members have undermined this democracy by advancing their own selfish personal interests. As recommended by the State Capture Commission, we are putting in place laws, institutions and practices that reduce corruption of any sort and any scale. To date, the NPA Investigating Directorate has taken 34 state capture and corruption cases to court involving over 200 accused persons. The ANC is committed to restoring trust and confidence as the leader of the national democratic revolution and the fundamental driver of socio-economic transformation in society. Today, we reflect on where we were before 1994 and see a stark contrast as we move towards 2024. These areas of progress are testament to the tireless efforts of the ANC in improving the lives of our people. The ANC calls on all citizens to join us in defending and advancing our freedom. Born 8 months before the first democratic election, I am a product of the ANC's commitment to social transformation. As a young member of parliament, perhaps Honorable Tintswalo, like President Mandela, I am convinced that the real makers of history, the real shapers of this democracy, the real people who will ensure that this democracy upholds their human rights are the ordinary men and women of our country. It is your participation, citizens of South Africa, in every decision about the future that will guarantee true democracy and freedom. Will this task be easy? No. But when a people are determined, President Mandela reminds us that they can achieve and overcome anything. I thank you, House Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Staff.
Honorable Chairperson, according to Chapter 10 of South Africa's Constitution, and I quote, "Everyone has inherent dignity and the right to have their dignity respected and protected." These words are lofty and noble, and when enacted, are welcomed with open arms. Regrettably, for millions of South Africans, the majority of whom are the most vulnerable in our society, their reality does not reflect the lofty ideals contained in our Constitution. For them, respect and protection of dignity is reserved for the few connected cadres. Their day-to-day reality is the direct opposite. Chairperson, let me spell it out for you, especially because today is the debate celebrating Human Rights Day. There is no dignity for the nearly 30 million South Africans who will go to bed hungry by next year. There is no dignity for the 27% of this country's children who are stunted. There is no dignity for the 81% of households which are skipping one meal a day. There's definitely no dignity for older persons who are abused, raped, and even killed because our police don't protect them. Our Constitution highlights a number of services that must be rendered to vulnerable citizens who fall into any of the categories I have mentioned, but aren't, not only to restore their dignity, but to ensure they are supported to live normal lives. It is in the provision of those services that in the last 5 years, at least, we have seen the unprecedented flouting of human rights by the ANC government. We see people sleeping outside SASSA offices and post offices, hoping, praying to get their social grants finalized so they can put food on their tables. They do so in vain. We hear harrowing stories of older persons whose grants are not paid for months while their families starve. We visit children, young children, forced to live alone, who've become breadwinners with no assistance from government. These are the people who our Constitution should really protect. Instead, they live on the edge of the exorbitantly high cost of living abyss created by the unfeeling and uncaring ANC government who has turned a blind eye to their tears. Chairperson, it is for this reason that the Democratic Alliance has and will continue to put forward solutions to restore, respect, and protect the dignity of all South Africans. These include and are not limited to extending the zero VAT-rated food items to include bone-in chicken, wheat flour, margarine, baby food, and tin food, increasing the child support grant to South Africa's official poverty line, extending the child support grant to pregnant mothers to increase the chances of children being born healthy, extending the child support grant to children over the age of 18 until they pass their national senior certificate. These solutions will ensure that no South African faces the risk of going to bed hungry. Chairperson, in the words of one of South Africa's foremost human rights advocates, and that is Helen Suzman, I quote, "I stand for simple justice, equal opportunity, and human rights, the indispensable elements in a democratic society, and well worth fighting for. The Democratic Alliance will use this simple truth to partner with all like-minded South Africans to turn these words into reality as we rescue South Africa come 21 May 2024.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The Honourable Matapelo Siwisa.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chairperson, 2024 marks 100 years of the birth of Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe, who was born on the 5th of December, 1924. The anti-pass campaign, which was violently suppressed by the racist white minority regime, was conceived, organized, and executed under the leadership of Robert Sobukwe and the Pan-Africanist Congress. Robert Sobukwe and his generation of freedom fighters had the most advanced concept of the struggle for liberation in the country and in the continent, and envisioned a South Africa and a continent in which rights to human dignity would be non-derogable and non-negotiable and central to every action of the policy of the state. Sharpeville and Langa are painful reminders of what the struggle for emancipation meant to those who came before us, how far we have strayed from those objectives. It is a call for all political parties and activists to ask of themselves if we have all become complicit in aiding the liberal narrative of our struggle to have predominant discourse in South Africa since 1994. In organizing the anti-pass campaign, leaders like Sobukwe were clear that the racist regime will all it could be protect its interests and even kill those considered less human. Robert Sobukwe's letter to Africans on the eve of the launch of the campaign demonstrates his unflinching commitment to the uprooting of colonialism and the introduction of a new Africanist socialist democracy. In that letter, he wrote, open quote, "This is not a game. The white rulers are going to be extremely ruthless, but we must meet their hysterical brutality with calm, iron determination. We are fighting the most noblest cause on earth, which is liberation of mankind. They are fighting to entrench and outrun an anachronistic, vile system of oppression. We represent progress, they represent decadence. We represent the fresh fragrance of flowers in bloom. They represent the rancid smell of a decaying vegetation. We have the whole continent on our side. We have history on our side. We will win, close quote. Honorable members, today we have seen the attributes of the regime that led to the massacre in Sharpeville and in Langa, reincarcerated in the regime led now by Black people from 1994. This is a regime that killed Andri Statani for demonstrating for water in community. This is a regime that massacred mine workers in Marikana for merely demanding a living wage. This is a regime that does it in defense deeply entrenched with business interests. This is a regime that beats up and jails young people who demand access to institutions of higher learning. This is a regime that has allowed this country to be a lawless country where over 13,000 women are raped in every single quarter. An average of 7,000 people are killed in every single quarter. And where criminal activities such as this one that happened in Palapala are defended by parliament to prosecute authorities and the courts. The regime indeed represents an unworn, anachronistic, and a very vile system of oppression, as Sobukwe characterized in the apartheid regime. The regime led by the ANC represents decadence, the economic free dice, represents a fresh fragrance of flowers in bloom. They represent a rancid smell of decaying vegetation. We represent progress. Only the freedom fighters has not lost the sight of the objective of the struggle for the liberation of our people, whose main focus was decolonization of this country and the entrenchment of fundamental human rights, at the core of which is access to the wealth of this country, economic liberation for all, the return of that is a surprising colonial settlers expropriated from the natives. The 2024 elections must determine whether South Africa is happy with the decadence of the ruling party or want a new, uncompromising, unflinching commitment to recentering African life in everything, in every state and society. In honor of Sobukwe and all of those brave men, women who paid the ultimate price for freedom, South Africans must vote for jobs and land now. They must vote to end load shedding. And by the way, I'm housing some Tinswalos in my house because NSFAS denied them and money for accommodation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Velenkosi Sabisa. Velenkosini.
Honorable Chair, 3 decades ago, our collective struggle for liberation saw a government of national unity displace an abusive regime. We entered democracy deliberately ending an era of human rights abuse. We had secured a constitution in which equality is the highest principle. Thanks to the IFP, we had also secured a Bill of Rights. The IFP ensured that human rights abuses could never be justified under any circumstance by those in power. To underline the centrality of the human rights, the IFP's former president, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, in his capacity as the Minister of Home Affairs, recommended to Cabinet that 21 March be set aside to commemorate the Sharperville massacre. It became known the Human Rights Day. Honorable Chair, it is the IFP's wish that this day should transcend mere commemoration to become the embodiment of behavior that needs to be reflected in every public office in our country in the protection of the Constitution. 30 years into democracy, we pause to evaluate whether government has honored its commitment to protect the human rights. If this was asked in 1999, the answer will be a good yes. Through the Government of National Unity, we transformed the full body of legislation towards honoring human rights. Through the collective efforts of the Government of National Unity, South Africa's crime rate and unemployment rate decreased year upon year. Our economy began growing at a steady pace, all of which translated into honoring the human rights. There is no dispute of progress done since 1994, but we should have done more. But in 2024, while much has been done towards advancing and protecting the human rights, things have turned upside down. The unwarranted has become warranted, and vice versa. The egocentrism of self-serving and theft have become the order of the day. South Africa is increasingly becoming an unequal society. The gap between the rich and the poor is growing every day. Only if we can defeat the disease of corruption, crime, joblessness, gender-based violence and abuse, the weak economy, and impunity to transgressors will more be achieved by this parliament and the government. As we celebrate the respect of human rights, we must instill the respect of the freedom of speech, as long as one does not denigrate other people. The forceful grabbing of the microphone at Wateza in Nongoma was uncalled for and a disappointment in front of the king and the head of the state. Our leaders must grow, must be matured, and must be tolerant. As the president of the IFP, who was present at the event,
Honorable members.
That the violence
Honorable members, order.
after the function ended remains unacceptable. Up to now, we are patiently awaiting clarity as to how the IFP was dragged into the matter, as the event was not an IFP event.
Thank you,
nor
honorable member.
wearing the IFP regalia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Order, honorable members. Moya Pansi. Order, please. Chief Whip of the majority party. Chief Whip of the majority party. Order, please, order. This is supposed to be a Human Rights Day. Order, honorable members. The Honorable Wouter Wynand Pass. Honorable vessels, you're welcome.
Thank you, Honorable. House Chairperson. House Chairperson, the Honorable Mukachwa says that the progress made by the ANC government cannot be disputed. But what she leaves out is that the progress that was made post-1994 has since been destroyed and reversed by the same ANC government. Because let us look at the facts. In the last decade, the literacy rate of South Africans decreased. 82% of grade 4 learners today cannot read. In the last decade, the number of water supply systems which are in a critical state increased by more than 10%. That is not progress. That's the opposite. In the last decade, functioning public hospitals have become completely dysfunctional. That's not progress. People are dying in our public hospitals. The number of households facing food insecurity did not decrease, but increased to more than 17 million facing hunger today. That is not progress. The ANC chairperson does not care about the dignity of ordinary South Africans. Your minds are behind bars. You are stuck in the past. That's all you can talk about. You are stuck there, Honorable Chief Whip, and you do not care that people are today suffering. Today in 2024, people are suffering. Not in 1980, now. And it's because of your inadequacy. It's because of your failed policies. Mother tongue education is disregarded by the ANC government and neglected. Basic access to adequate water supply is disregarded, and a water crisis is looming. The ANC government was warned of an electricity crisis. What did you do? Nothing. You stole more. You stole Eskom to such an extent that the crisis is even more and worse than the opposition predicted. The water crisis, Honorable Chairperson, is going to be worse than we are today predicting, because money is being stolen by municipalities and by cadres, which should go to the maintenance of water infrastructure. We have dysfunctioning water systems in South Africa whilst we are a water scarce country. But the ANC does not care. People are suffering because of a lack of basic water supply. The ANC regime neglects public health. They do not care that people are suffering in public hospitals. The ANC regime allows corruption in NSFAS, and then the honorable member comes and boasts about the number of students that get bursaries. How many more could have studied if it wasn't for that corruption? We don't need laws to rid this government of corruption. We need a new government. We need a new dispensation where actual human rights are respected and where there's actual service delivery to the people out there, and not a power-hungry and corrupt government. On the 29th of May, South Africans can choose to restore human dignity and restore basic human rights. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable vessels. The Honorable Stephen. Honorable Yoleswa.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, whilst the ACDP acknowledges that progress has been made in terms of our constitution, in upholding the rule of law and ensuring media freedom and the independence of the judiciary, the scorecard is dismal when it comes to justice, access to food, quality education and healthcare, decent housing and employment. The ANC government is becoming increasingly incompetent and incapable, rife with corruption as admitted by the speaker from the ANC itself, and serving its own narrow personal and political interests. We have 87 people that are murdered in South Africa per day. And a woman is raped 11 minutes, every 11 minutes in the country, every single day. And that is absolutely disgraceful. And we all need to accept responsibility for that. We all need to accept responsibility for that. But in the last 15 years, in particular, what we've seen, state capture and corruption, billions of rands, and over the past 5 years, we experienced one of the world's longest and harshest COVID-19 lockdowns that trampled on basic human rights, devastated livelihoods. And to compound matters, we have and are experiencing ongoing load shedding, logistics and water crises. And lest we forget, in 2021, we witnessed with shock and disbelief, rioting and looting, resulting in 354 deaths, 50 billion rands of damages. No wonder many South Africans say we mark but do not celebrate 30 years of democracy. And where were the state security services? Absent at that time. Chairperson, households are experiencing severe hardships, struggling to make ends meet, load shedding, logistics crisis, as I mentioned, high interest rates are resulting in a weak economy. Millions of people are either in unemployment or are facing severe cost of living crises. The circumstances in rural towns is even more dire, with children suffering from severe acute malnutrition and tragically even dying from starvation. That is absolutely disgraceful. Chairperson, we say, cry the beloved country indeed, cry the beloved country. But there is hope. As South Africa prepares for its 7th democratic election, the ACDP has heard the SOS from the people. We offer elected representatives who are servant leaders, who understand stewardship of state resources, who will not loot and steal, but care for the people. We would encourage those viewers to vote for the ACDP on the 29th of May, your hope for a better future. And lastly, we continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and peace in the Middle East, in the knowledge that God who watches over Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. The Honourable Brett Heron.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, our struggle for democracy was essentially a struggle.
Order, honourable members.
Our struggle for democracy was essentially a struggle for fundamental and inalienable human rights. The apartheid government denied South Africans their basic human rights and law. But because these rights are universal and inalienable, the laws they wrote could only be implemented through suppression and oppression. It took violence, excessive policing, and an army to hold back the tide of resistance. The triumph of the struggle and the resistance over the might of the apartheid government led to achieving a constitutional democracy and an enshrined Bill of Rights that was carefully crafted in order to protect our freedoms and redress the indignities of our history. As a nation, we must celebrate the constitutional protection and promotion of a rights-based democracy, where no person, regardless of their status, is exempt from their duty to not only respect the rights of others, but also to actively give meaning to those rights. Over the past 30 years, our commitment to our Constitution and our Bill of Rights has been tested. Our Bill of Rights has proven to be resilient and unbreakable, and our Constitutional Court and the judiciary have demonstrated their independence and appetite to give progressive meaning to the rights enshrined in our Bill of Rights. Some significant and life-changing judgments have included the 1995 court decision that the right to life was inconsistent with the death penalty, the 2004 court decision which imposed a duty on the rail service providers to ensure the safety of commuters. In 2004, the court also protected the right of African women to inherit under the African customary law. And in 2005, the court found that the failure to provide for same-sex couples to enjoy the same status accorded to heterosexual couples through marriage constituted an unjustifiable violation of their rights. Perhaps one of the most significant examples of the human realization of a written text of rights is the groundbreaking Grootboom case of 2000. This socioeconomic rights case, which upheld the right to housing, and it has become one of the most cited cases in the world. Of course, South Africans continue to struggle to have their rights realized or protected on a daily basis. For those who are organized or have means, they use the courts to fight for these rights. For others, they use Chapter 9 institutions like the Public Protector or the Human Rights Commission. We can celebrate that we have well-developed human rights culture and that we have developed the institutions to give life to these rights. The process to hold the state and private individuals and companies accountable to protect and progress our human rights is sometimes painfully slow. But we can celebrate that the founders of our Constitution, had the foresight and wisdom to know that rights would not be worth the paper they're written on if any South African was unable, due to a lack of means, to claim or enforce these rights. On Human Rights Day this week, it is important for all of us to recognize how far we have come, how much more we have to do, and that we all bear the responsibility of ensuring our rights, particularly our socioeconomic rights, are progressively realized. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Mansour.
House Chairperson, I think the first question we need to ask in this House, does any of these people here have the right to talk about human rights?
Members.
When you make one of the most despicable statements you can ever hear, and that is saying one man's freedom being another man's genocide.
Honorable Imam, please take your seat. Honorable members, I'm expecting absolute cooperation from all of you, both sides of the universe. We're expecting absolute cooperation from your good selves. Please, let's allow a member to state his case without any interruption. There's a hand from the Honorable member down there. What's your point of order, Honorable Member?
Honorable Chair, is the Speaker at the podium prepared to take a question?
Honorable Mansour, are you prepared to take a question?
No time to waste, Chair. No, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. He is not prepared. You can go ahead, Honorable. You can proceed, Honorable Member.
One thing the DA, the Freedom Front, and the IFP have in common, and that is the word apartheid. Let us not forget the role of the IFP colluding with the apartheid regime pre-1994. Let us not forget about the role of the DA and the Freedom Front. The DA is generally another term for the apartheid regime, the National Party. Let us not deny that. Now, can you imagine this most despicable statement that's made by John Steenhuisen? Are you surprised? No, I'm not. If you look at the corruption that's taking place in his party.
Honorable Sheikh, let's call each other honorable members or Mr. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairperson. If you want to call that honorable, I will call him Honorable John Steenhuisen with the corruption in his own political party. If you've just heard about the funding for his campaign, he does not talk about that. That is all at the expense of the violation of the human rights of South Africans. But let me go one step further, Chairperson. The question I want to ask ordinary South Africans is, can you trust political parties who go in the public domain and make a statement that one person's genocide is another person's freedom? Is that not taking us back to the days of apartheid? Is that where you want to head to? I'm calling on you to reject with the contempt it deserves the DA, the IFP, the Freedom Front, the ACDP, the PA, and Action SA. So let the IFP not come and tell us here that they fought on the side of those that were being violated, whose rights were being violated. They know exactly what they have done. They know how much of blood has been shed in the hands of the poorest of the poor and the most vulnerable people in South Africa. Let us not forget that. Palestine will be free. The very same people that go out and support Ukraine sit back and allow the Palestinians to be massacred day and night. And you come and talk here about children. You come and talk here about women. I want to say to those in the Western Cape, if you do not want the Western Cape to be turned into a Zionist state, if you don't want the Western Cape to go to the hands of the West, rise, Khoisan Sand, rise and rise now. Rise, black people, rise now against this white domination, this white supremacy. Rise. Rise against the IFP in KZN. They have never delivered anything to you. Look at the conditions under which you live today. There is no doubt there's been a lot of progress in the country.
Honorable
And these
Imam.
people are trying to oppose that
Honorable
progress.
Imam.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Lekoff, just a minute, please. The Honorable Lekoff, just a minute. Honorable members, although the speech of the Honorable Imam was not directed at me, but I've got an obligation to listen to him very carefully, although it is not meant for me. The way it went, honorable members, I am tempted to call him back so that he can start afresh. Because I actually, yeah. Honorable members, I only said I am tempted. I didn't say he should come back. Now, could you please afford the Honorable Anatole Lekoff to state his case? Thank you. You may proceed, Honorable Member.
Honorable Chairperson, fellow South Africans, on the 8th of May, 1996, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa was adopted as the supreme law of this land. It represents our highest aspirations and the collective wisdom of the South African people. Enacted within the Constitution is Chapter 2, the Bill of Rights, which seeks to establish a society based on democratic values and fundamental human rights. And according to the Constitution, the government of today must respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the fundamental rights of our citizens. While the Bill of Rights is explicitly clear on what is required of the state to uphold and advance the greater realization of fundamental human rights, it very much remains to be seen that the present ANC government is fulfilling its constitutional responsibilities. I say this not to be political, as independent fact-based agencies like Stats SA and the Auditor General paint a damning picture of the ANC's record in respecting the human rights of our fellow South Africans. Imagine for a moment that you were an 18-year-old South African who is eligible to vote for the first time in the national and provincial government elections this year. If you were 18 this year, you would live in fear of knowing you live in the country with the highest murder rate in the world, and that you or your member of your family could potentially be one of the 85.7 people who are murdered every single day in this country. If you were 18 this year, such is the national trauma of being a young person in South Africa that you would have watched in terror as this ANC government failed to suppress a violent insurrection, which is largely regarded to have been inspired by their previous leader, which swept across KZN and Gauteng in July 2021, turning large parts of our cities into war zones, leaving 354 people dead and causing in excess of 50 billion rands worth of damage to property and infrastructure and the loss of 150,000 jobs. If you were 18 this year, your first practical awareness of politics in South Africa would not have been Nelson Mandela or the Sharpeville massacre of 64 years ago, the reason for which we observe Human Rights Day. Instead, your practical awareness of South African politics would have probably have been how your country was sold by the ANC to the Guptas. And a Minister of Finance who had a 4-day tenure as a weekend special, and of the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. If you were 18 this year, you would have known what it means to live with load shedding caused by the ANC up to 12 hours a day from the day you were born to this very present day. And you would know what it is like to have to arrive home in the dark to be unable to cook or study or do your homework, while the electricity has become less available, but even more expensive. If you were 18 this year, you would have learned on the 20th of February, 2024, this year, in the quarterly labor force survey of quarter 4 of 2023, that you lived in a country with the highest unemployment rate in the world. And that even if you were lucky enough to matriculate later this year, you would very likely just become one of the 6.8 million young South Africans between the ages of 15 to 34 who are victims of the unemployment crisis in our country, which is virtually in recession. It is not enough that our human rights exist just on paper. That is never what the Constitution intended for any of us. If we want to live in a society where fundamental human rights are foremost, then we must acknowledge we cannot achieve these things while our country is on a course heading of terminal decline. The DA has a rescue plan for South Africa that is centered on upholding the Bill of Rights, on creating 2 million jobs, lifting 6 million people out of poverty, and restoring the dignity of those who have lost it. Vote DA to Rescue SA on the 29th of May. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The Honorable Noble Sir Pamela Ngabane. Honorable Deputy Minister, there's a point of order. Could you please?
No, I just wanted to, I raised my hand when he was still on the podium that if you have to raise any pamphlet in the House, you must have the permission of the Speaker. Thank you.
Noted, Honorable Member. Thank you very much. You may proceed, Honorable Deputy Minister.
House Chairperson, as we enter Ubuntu Week, let's condemn the IFP attack on innocent members of the African National Congress at Gwaqeza. That act is the violation of the human rights. They must understand if they don't know. The recent survey by Van Gaat reveals that the Western Cape province, where the DA is governing, ranked the least safe province for women. The Western Cape has come bottom of the safety index as it had the highest number of incidents for community and young children related crimes, property related crimes, safety and theft. As far as exclusion is concerned in relation to Black people, siyazi by Western Cape, it's two worlds. Kunendawo yabantu abamnyama nendawo yabantu abamhlophe. Apho abantu bakhona bahlala ebugqwalubeni bengahoywa, bantu baseMzantsi Afrika bayazeni iDA. Kunjengangoku ndithethayo nje, kunayo ne-exclusion of black leaders kwi-DA. Siye sabona kukhutshwa ooMazibuko, siye sabona kukhutshwa ooVan Damme, siye kakubona kukhutshwa ooMayimane, capable leaders because they are black. Noma Jolu uye walandela. Who is next? Zibuzeni nini enibamnyama enikhona apha ngaphakathi. A nationwide survey previously revealed that 76% of people feel unsafe and 30% consider immigration due to safety concerns. Today, we want to expose the DA's political modus operandi to you voters apho emakhaya funeka nibazile. It is crystal clear that the pre-democratic dispensation, the DA was the NP since 1914 to 1997. And to date, the DA has been and continues to violate human rights of the marginalized people in South Africa. I will list few children and young girls that we lost under the watch of the DA. The 6-year-old Jocelyn, the 17-year-old Ongeziwe, 11-year-old Monashia. During the colonialism and apartheid era, the majority of South Africans, Black people in general, Africans in particular, were systematically discriminated, marginalized, and excluded from the meaningful participation in the mainstream economy. So to avoid making mistakes of the past, we dare not forget the injustices of the past. And winning our freedom was the first step for us to live a better life. The ANC government of the people, which by the way includes yourselves, because we are your government too, has reversed all this madness. And today you will be kind enough to appreciate that we live side by side with you in what was predominantly known as white-only suburbs and urban areas. The ANC government overhauled the labor market regulation and introduced the 1995 Labor Relations Act,
which addressed a lot of anomalies such as the adversarialities of industrial relations, the high levels of strike arising from the refusal of such basic rights as freedom of association to form and belong to trade unions, unfair dismissal and retrenchments. The DA, I'm going to advise them to adopt a jurisprudential philosophical interpretation of Ubuntu, which is aligned to moral theory, which suggests a promising new conception of human rights, which is free of human violation, equality and freedom as enshrined in our constitution. The human rights should be based on the principal value of Ubuntu. Sakin claims that a human rights culture couldn't develop in apartheid South Africa due to the fact that the system bred intolerance and culture of violence and lack of respect for the life and rights in general. Post-colonialism, there was an urgent need to foster a human rights culture and to demonstrate the need of human rights, which then, after the ANC took power in 1994, South Africa became a better place as far as human rights is concerned. Since the dawn of democracy 30 years ago, the government, working hand in hand with the people of South Africa, has done enormous work to promote economic inclusion of the previously marginalized persons, in particular the working class. The main point I want to make here is that despite the difficult conditions that we experience as Black people, the basic architecture of the industrial relations system introduced after 1994 has survived and stood the test of time. Let me demonstrate this for those who continue to miss the point. On my left, what is happening now?
Honorable Moremadi. Voila.
Let me demonstrate this for those who continue to miss the point on my left. So just yesterday, the Honorable President Cyril Ramaphosa was addressing the Human Rights Conference marking the 30th anniversary of democracy and human rights in South Africa. Our 30 years of democracy sought to respond to the sacrifices made by our people and clarion call made by Congress of the People in 1955. In responding to this call, we made sure that we cement these aspirations in our founding document, the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, which is the supreme law of the land. Today, we are proud to attest to the fact that the survey reveals that South Africa is amongst the 3 countries that lead their way in the first generation of the African Entrepreneurial Index. Our democracy guaranteed fundamental human rights of all South Africans. It paved the way for the introduction of the transformative laws and policies on workers' rights, employment equity, and broad-based Black economic empowerment to ensure greater access to employment and meaningful participation of women and youth in the mainstream economy. In the mining sector, Black ownership increased from 2% when the DA was leading as the National Party to 39% today. To date, we can list companies that are beneficiaries of this transformation that we are talking about. It's Seriti, African Rainbow Minerals, Kalahati Manganese, Tungela, Exaro, and Tsimbintle Holdings. It is also happening that 30 years after the attainment of democracy, 72,000 women are active participants in the mining industry. As part of government's concerted effort to achieve prosperity where people will be free of poverty through transformation of the structure of the economy and to ensure a more equitable distribution of wealth and control of our national economic asset, the department, in partnership with the IDC, launched a 400 million exploration fund. We are convinced that the fund will not only promote participation of junior miners in exploration, but will accelerate the discovery of new mineral resources and thus reignite the emergency of new mining. We have established artisanal and small-scale miners fund to financially support artisanal and small-scale miners, building on the tremendous strides made by the government in empowering women, in particular women in mining. The majority share of this fund is dedicated for women. We want women to apply for this fund. With a renewed mandate, because we are coming back, we know people of South Africa, they have trust in the African National Congress. The ANC-led government will continue investing efforts and resources to stimulate, transform, and grow this economy so that it can create business opportunities and create the much-needed jobs for millions of young people and women. The department is working on a critical mineral strategy with a particular focus on ensuring that more of what is mined in our country is beneficiated locally.
It is regrettable that too many of our natural resources are exported in raw form and then imported back in South Africa as manufactured goods. Hence, we are determined to ensure that beneficiation at source happens in our lifetime, to do away with the pit-to-port approach to mining and to put to an end the export of jobs and profits. If we are to truly derive value for this initiative, we will need rigorous to promote the African Continental Free Trade Area as a game changer for the realization of the Africa we want. Honorable members, as these transformative measures and many others have made South Africa a much better place than it was before 1994, it is expected of the anti-transformation forces inside this House and outside to disregard these facts. Hence, they regroup in splinter groups and small parties with the sole purpose of reversing our transformative gains. The onslaught against transformation, including the deployment of capable cadres in strategic economic sectors, must never deter us as the African National Congress to redress the historic injustices of the colonial and apartheid era, but should make us to be more determined to succeed in building a better life for all. The fact of the matter is that the ANC-led government remains the only reliable force that is capable of transforming this country to achieve a national democratic society. Hence, we remain steadfast in ensuring that the social and economic advancement of Black people in general becomes an even more deliberate feature of our work. Working together, we will put South Africa to work. We are going to defend our democracy and advance freedom. The journey towards the full realization of the vision espoused in the Freedom Charter continues. In conclusion, as we look forward to the provincial national elections in May 29, we look into the future in the face of changing the conditions of our people. The journey we have traversed gives us hope that today is better than yesterday and tomorrow will be much better than today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Minister. The Honorable Mahlubanzima Jafta. The Honorable Mahlubanzima Jafta. We pass. Cope. PHC. Oh, Cope is on its way. We have provided accommodation for a speedy moving forward. Hence, we have a chair provided for that, honorable member.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. We'll speak outside this house. While Human Rights Day, observed annually on the 21st of March, holds significant historical importance, it is untenable that it is not a day of celebration by all South Africans because of how unequal a society we remain and how deep poverty is rooted in our communities. On March the 21st, 1960, apartheid police shot and killed 69 protesters in Sharpeville. In 1994, President Mandela declared March 21st as Human Rights Day. This day must always serve as a reminder of sacrifices made during the struggle for democracy. It must also be a day each year when we turn the mirror on ourselves as public representatives to ask what exactly are we doing to show our resolute commitment to advancing the rights enshrined in our Bill of Rights. Persistent social economic disparities continue to affect millions of South Africans from the historically marginalized backgrounds living in our economically untransformed townships, bleak informal settlements, and neglected rural areas. These disparities are raising questions about the practical impact of constitutional rights. Our contention as COPE is that there is no national audit of the advancement of fundamental freedoms. Rampant corruption, bureaucratic inefficiencies, and lack of political will have left the marginalized people far behind. In the streets of our township, people are deeply aggrieved that their rights have not been adequately protected due to ineffective governance at every level. Every government structure has also failed in creating a strong awareness about individual rights and how to assert them. People are dismissive of the Constitution because of glaring governance failures. Minister, every Human Rights Day should be an assessment day of how many citizens fully understand their rights and how many citizens have a good understanding of how to exercise those rights. Every Human Rights Day, this Parliament should be assessing whether education has played its crucial role in empowering citizens, like those in our townships and rural areas, to appreciate and defend their own rights. Despite constitutional guarantees, economic inequalities persist across the land. Millions of predominantly Black South Africans remain excluded from the full benefits of democracy. This disparity is fueling deep skepticism about the transformative potential of our Bill of Rights. For us, members of this House, the alarm bells should be ringing loudly and persistently. We need to encourage urgently and serious dialogue on socio-economic problems, promote awareness of these rights, and address
Thank you very much,
the
Honorable Member.
immediate challenges. Thank you, Chair.
The Honorable Nestle Sharif.
Thank you, House Chairperson. As a young South African, I will not come here and thank the ANC for anything. Yes, we have democracy, but we are not free or equal under this government. We will not be beholden by you. Let me immediately direct your attention to Section 27 of the Bill of Rights enshrined in our Constitution. It states that everyone has the right to access healthcare, sufficient food, social security, and the right to have access to water. Just based on Section 27 of the Bill of Rights alone, the ANC fails dismally. Women are unsafe, children are at risk, and the dignity of life itself has been broken down by poor governance and an absolute disregard to the realities people face. Service delivery as we know it has come to an end, and you can see it around you every single day. Provinces like Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal, like other parts of the country, where people are waking up to no water in their homes, and it is soul-wrenching. When we speak about a water crisis, it is not something we speak about from a distance. All of us are struggling under a failed state. Water literally has the ability to give life, and the lack of water can literally take away lives. The water crisis affects those with the least the most. Many underprivileged households and those living in poverty face the harshest brunt. For those who can afford it, like many here today, you can make a plan. You can buy water, you can get JoJo tanks. But what about those who have to walk kilometers to just get water? Those with little kids that go without water for days, or those with sick people in their care. Does the ANC care about the human rights of the people in this country? I would say no. The water crisis is getting worse, and under this government, there is no evidence that shows they can fix the mess they created. What makes matters worse is that the water crisis is not something new. As the DA has been highlighting the failures, outlining the risks, and providing solutions for several years. The failure of the ANC to respect and promote human rights must not go unabated. We must hold them accountable. The DA in its election manifesto has prioritized ending water sharing. Why? Because we must protect basic human rights. The DA's plan to end water sharing includes an 8-point plan. One of our biggest focuses is to ensure that infrastructure is maintained and encourage investment in water infrastructure projects. The DA has a plan to rescue South Africa from water shedding by working towards developing water-sensitive cities that will seek to optimize stormwater and urban waterways for improved flood control and water reuse, and developing public spaces that collect, clean, and recycle water. Water quality testing must work optimally to ensure that the safety of water and improve the most important part, and that is access to water. South Africa, you have a choice. The quality of your life and our future is in your hands. You can decide if a life without the safety, respect, and promotion of your basic human rights is the way to continue. But the DA is here to give you a different choice. We have the solutions, the leadership, the experience, and the might to not only remove the ANC, but the ability to rescue South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. The Honorable Ramo Eleti or Paken Mahomapelo. You're welcome.
Mo tlotlege modulasetulo. Ke ne ke re ke dumedise le batlotlegi mo tlhentlong eno. And also greetings to the collective of the executive members who are with us here today. The people of South Africa will overwhelmingly, on the 29th of May, vote for the ANC because they know that their organization, the African National Congress, led a process which in 1955 culminated in the adoption of the Freedom Charter. Among other things in that Freedom Charter, the people of South Africa were saying, South Africa will one day rank among nations of the world that pursues peace. They will vote for the ANC on the 29th of May, because as we speak here today, South Africa is a signatory to the peace treaties of the world, which among other things include International Covenant Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, International Covenant Civil of Political Rights, Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination, and all other treaties that I will not mention because of time. They will vote for the ANC on the 29th of May because they know that the ANC has always made it a point that all of us understand that we are part of the African continent. That is why we are participating in SADC bodies, including the SADC human rights system. That is why we are part of the African Union. The people of South Africa will overwhelmingly vote for the ANC on the 29th of May because they know that their peace here in South Africa was disrupted by those who moved from their own countries in 1652, came to South Africa to disrupt our peace as Africans. They will continue to support the African National Congress because they know that their organization, the African National Congress, is a tshwetso ya gore e tla lwana kgaratlho go fitlhelela tokologo ya motho o montsho. Jaanong bagaetsho rona re le ANC re itse sentle fela gore we have never in this country went to other countries to disrupt peace of other countries. Now today we sit with problems here in South Africa because there are people who chose a decision to come to South Africa, disrupt our peace, as I have said, and those people came from Netherlands and Britain. Today, as we sit here in Parliament, they want us to learn from them on how human rights can be fought for, how human rights can be achieved, when they know that man-made laws were developed here in South Africa to oppress Black people. The people of South Africa will continue to vote for the ANC on the 29th of May, because they know that their quest, which emerged from the Freedom Charter, has resulted in international trade agreements where investment are taking place now in South Africa, whereas South Africa, we export to other nations of the world because we are reciprocating to those countries that stood with us during the dark days of apartheid colonialism. The people of South Africa will continue to vote for the ANC on the 29th of May because they know that their organization, the African National Congress, seeks not only to liberate its members, but it liberates everybody to achieve a South Africa that is united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous. They will continue to support the African National Congress because they know that pursuance of peace all over the world is our mantra. They know that as the ANC leading this government, we will not encourage war internationally, but will look for spaces for peace. We will engage nations of the world as we are doing today, yesterday, and many decades ago. Whether it is in Ukraine and Russia, South Africa continues to engage the two countries to make sure that peace prevails on that part of the world. But the DA here will not in their speech mention the fact that the people of Palestine in Gaza are not enjoying their rights today, and you don't even have the audacity to even say, South Africans, let's thank the ANC government for going to the ICJ, because the ICJ today agrees with our fact. But Chair, because I'm left with 5 minutes, I want to go to the matter of the letter of the Democratic Alliance, which was written to the United States of America. This letter, based on the rights that the ANC has fought for in this country, to liberate everybody, including the DA, they abuse that right by writing a letter, and this letter demonstrates nothing else but the fact that the DA suffers from deep-rooted and inherently embedded Afrophobism. Number two, it is nothing else, that letter, but a demonstration of hypocrisy in the abilities of the AU to lead matters of Africa, because the DA suffers from Afro-pessimism. Thirdly, because the DA believes in Swart-Gefarism, they seek to send a message to the US that these Black people and Africans on their own, they will not be able to manage their own affairs, including elections. The embedded subtle message in the letter seeks to say to the US that we are dealing here with brainless, dumb, stupid, myopic Black people who the only thing they know is violence that will threaten the elections. They also write a letter which seeks to undermine the scientific proven history of the IEC to be able to run our elections without any problem in this country. They abuse their rights, which were fought for them, and they seek to instill fear through that letter all over the world, so that the growing confidence that nations of the world have on South Africa can begin to dwindle and you will not succeed. You write a letter because as offsprings of imperial global powers, supported by capital and military might all over the world, you know nothing else but to see incapacity among Blacks and Africans. Your myopic, uninformed, and unpatriotic letter to the US has exposed the actual extent to which you don't have confidence in your own party agents who are going to be in every voting station to make sure that the elections go well. You write a letter that actually shows your bankruptcy and your lack of confidence in your own representatives in the multi-party structures, where all parties are represented to engage with the IEC on the elections. As the ANC, as part of our human rights culture, we will not keep quiet on such conduct by the DA and other individuals because we fought for democracy, we fought for the rights, but when rights are being abused, when rights are being myopically manipulated to pursue particular agendas, we will not keep quiet as the African National Congress. Honorable Hlabisa, as the ANC, our approach is not Maguliwe. As the ANC, our approach is that where there are differences in society, we must not seek for shortcuts. What we need to do is to make sure, no matter how difficult the situation might be, is for engagement to take place among ourselves because we have a responsibility to lead. So I call upon you, my leader, to provide leadership and make sure that we appeal to everybody throughout the country, including the province of KZN, to make sure that there is peace so that elections can take place within a peaceful environment. Maguliwe is not going to assist anybody. In conclusion, I just want to indicate that as the ANC, we will continue to lead a struggle that will culminate into the realization of what our people said in 1955, and I quote, "We pledge ourselves to strive together, sparing neither strength nor courage, until the democratic changes we seek are fully achieved and realized." Thank you very much, Budula Stulo. Ke a leboha.
Jesus.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Free education.
Thank you, honorable members. The secretary will read the second order. Honorable Sonti, uyangibambezela. The secretary will read the second order.
Consideration of request for permission in terms of Rule 286, brackets 4, brackets B, to inquire into extending the subject of General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill, Bill 40/2023, interim report of Ad hoc Committee on General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill on the General Intelligence Laws Amendment Bill.
Thank you. And I'll recognize the Honorable Castellina Machotina, as Chief Whip of the Majority Party.
Chair, we are Usemandle, these are all the names. Thank you very much. House Chair, I move that this report be referred back to the committee for further consultation. It became glaring that there are certain issues that the committee want to raise, but they still need to engage further across parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any objections? No objections, agreed to. Honorable members, I will now suspend the proceedings until 14 hours when the House will consider questions for oral reply by the President. Bells will be rung to alert members to the resumption of business. Business is now suspended. Thank you.
Recording stopped.
Akusekho lapho. Kunepeneferis, yabuya. Khuluma naye.